At the beginning, I'd like to thank a number of people that have helped make the online exhibit and this reception possible. There was a lot of hard work involved, and it took many hours over a number of weeks. So the people I'd like to recognize are Lori Jugendtabler, Roberta Noren, Louise Hara, Nicole Mordecai, and Wayne Davis. And yes, so what I'd like to do is to start by sharing my screen. And each photographer will speak in order. We're going to start with Terry, and we'll proceed alphabetically in order of the last name of each photographer. Terry, you'll unmute yourself.
Okay. All right. So my first image is, I'm a wildlife photographer, although I do some landscapes and some abstracts. And we were lucky enough to be in Pantanal, Brazil last year. And this jaguar, we were in a boat and he was on a small cliff, just holding court and looking at all of us. It's beautiful. The year before, I went on an Earthwatch expedition where we had to count and monitor all the animals at water holes. And these two hippos were kind of cuddling together. And so it's called Hippo Family. And I should say all of these designs come in canvases of various sizes. Like this one is 10 by 13. I'll show you at the end the actual canvas. This was another one from that Malawi trip, although this particular one I took on a little trip to South Africa after it. And these are not photoshopped colors. These are the real colors of this bird, the lilac-breasted roller. The sun was shining right on the bird, but the sky was grayish. So it's just perfect for a picture. This one I took in Concord, right down the street from me. You can only get to this place by boat. It's the what Thoreau called the Twin Pond to Weldon Pond. It's called Fairhaven Bay. It's on the Sudbury River. And this, of course, was taken during the fall foliage season. Next one. Oh, yep, okay. This one, I went on a tiger safari in India in Ranthambore Park, and we didn't see the tiger. But the guide flipped out when we saw this owl. He says it's very rare. He called it a brown fish owl. So that's some good shots of that. He's very camouflaged, as you can see. And the last one, there's one the other way. Yeah, keep going the other way.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't have a right area. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, there. Okay, one more after that. There we go. Okay, this one is blue waxbills in Malawi. They were like an aqua color, and they came right into our campground. We lived in tents there. So if you want to stop sharing for a minute, Tom, I just show an actual canvas, if I can do that.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, so like I said, all of these come on canvases, and I want to show you how the back is. They're made out of wood. I send in my photographs, and this guy prints them on this giant canvas printer, and then he staples them on this handmade wood board on the back. And they come in all different sizes, custom sizes. Also, I have coasters. Everything's backwards. There. Yeah. Coaster sets of all of these, note cards, everything can be ordered on all different kinds of things. The last thing I want to show you is a ceramic trivia. So all of these are available on those products. Thanks a lot for coming today.
And now we'll move on to David Ewing.
Okay, so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, so this is just a close-up of a butterfly. I went to a butterfly park nearby, and I took a bunch of shots of some really cool butterflies. This one was maybe about 2 inches from wingtip to wingtip, and I didn't do any photoshopping at all. Just luck of the draw for the most part. So yeah. This one was really small. This butterfly was maybe about 1.5 inches long, 1 inch to 1.5 inches from base to top. And it was just sitting on a little green leaf. And there's a tiny bit of photoshopping just to get the oranges to pop against the green a little bit more, and to get the blacks to pop out as well. So yeah. Another butterfly. This is, I think, a blue morpho butterfly. No photoshopping here at all. This butterfly was a little bit larger, maybe about 3.5 to 4 inches from wingtip to wingtip. And there were a lot of these at the butterfly park, flying all around, getting stuck in people's hair, landing on people's shoulders and such. So yeah, I really like the contrast between the bright blue of his wings and the bright green of technically springtime leaves, even though the shot was in early March. So this was a shot at a local greenhouse. And this was in mid-February. So I went to this greenhouse as well as the butterfly park, and I took a bunch of really close-up shots, macro shots of each flower that I liked, just to kind of play with the form and what in the depth of field, try to keep some things in focus and some things out of focus. And this was a close-up. I don't remember this kind of what the flower is, but yeah, I like it because it almost doesn't even look like a flower. This is another flower. These flowers were really small. I got really, really close with my macro. And yeah, I like the way the light's bouncing off each little bud in the center, and the way only part of it is in focus. So yeah. Oh, another butterfly from the butterfly park. This one was another really small one. The really small butterflies seem to pop to me a little bit more than the large ones, like the blue morpho. The smaller ones almost seem to have more detail in their wings, and their antenna really pop against the background, and his little bitty legs pop against the tiny blade of grass that butterfly is resting on. So yeah. Another flower. I don't remember what this flower is called, but yeah, this was taken in mid-February, and the flowers had just been watered early morning. So technically it's just water from a sprinkler system, but it looks like it might be morning dew as well. So yeah, I like the playing of the white against the dark background and the dark green leaves, and how the background leaves are out of focus, but the front of the flower and the water droplets are in focus. So yeah.
Thank you, David.
Cool, you're welcome.
So the next photographer is Steve Goldstein. If you want to unmute, oh, there you go.
Unmute to work. So I just want to say most of these photos were taken over a period of just a few days on a trip that my wife and I made to Iceland a few years ago. And if you've never had the opportunity to go there, it is as amazing a place as anyone says it is. You really should go there. It's a completely different sort of landscape. Can you go back to that first one there, Tom?
Yeah. The slideshow is hard to stop.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this is just a detail. It's actually a small part of a negative. I should say that I still work with film and I print in a darkroom because I'm old-fashioned, and I enjoy it. So this was a section of a negative. The other half of the negative was kind of ugly, but I found this really nice surf image lurking in one side of the negative, and I made a print out of it. This is taken in nearly the same area and almost the same time. We went up a hill to an incredibly windy place and just looked out over the black sand beach. Many of the Icelandic beaches are black because it's not sand like we're familiar with here in New England. It's actually all smashed up little bits of lava. And it's not, it's more like walking on gravel than it is walking on a sandy beach.
Want me to go back?
No, that's okay. This is, we were driving along this little dirt road, which was actually a numbered highway in Iceland, but a dirt rutted road nevertheless. And I spotted this as I was driving too fast down the dirt road, so I had to jam the brakes on and run back 100 yards with my camera. It's actually a fairly typical kind of view in Iceland. You know, being so far north, the sun is quite low in the sky all the time. There's a lot of clouds, and you know, it was late in the day to begin with, but there was something about this particular view that really struck me. And so it turned out to be worth the effort. Now this is taken at basically the southernmost point of Iceland. This is a large cliff of volcanic, I think it's called andesite, or some people call it columnar basalts. And it's so famous. Everything in Iceland has a name, and this one has a name, and I won't attempt to pronounce it, but I did write it down. So this was, I took several images of this basalt structure here, and 2 images, there's only one in the show, but the other one, which was about 20 feet away from this one, the nature of the rock is completely different. It gets a lot of weathering because it's right on the beach facing south, and there is nothing within thousands of miles to block the weather. So this stuff really gets hammered. And when the tide comes in, it's underwater, or at least this lower part. Okay, now we can go. So we move from the southernmost point of Iceland to the westernmost point. This is a place called Latrebjarg, and it has these huge, huge cliffs that you can walk along for miles. And the cliffs are populated by tens of thousands of seabirds, and they had all left because we were there in September and they had gone on to warmer places. But there was this really neat cloud structure that I just had to take a picture of.
I'll go back.
And you can see that little whirl thing up in the left. You can see it better if you actually go to the website and look at the show. Especially the horizontal pictures show very well on the screen. Okay, now about 20 minutes after that picture, as we were walking back towards where we had parked, we came to what is truly the westernmost point of Iceland. And there was this magnificent surf breaking on the black sand below a lighthouse that I've removed from the image. I cropped off the right side of the image because I preferred it just a little more abstract with the surf and nothing else. And then finally, something completely different. I really like this very peaceful image of aspen trees. I took this 9 years ago when I was out on a workshop with a very famous photographer who is now sadly deceased, named Ray McSavany. And I just kind of went off by myself, wandering around with my 4x5 camera. And halfway down a very steep slope, I found these lovely little trees. And I guess that's about it. Only 7 images. So I'll pass the baton.
And the next photographer is Nicole Mordecai. I think Nicole has joined us.
Hello.
Glad you could make it, Nicole.
Thanks. If do you want to, if you click on the image, you can scroll through them, can't you?
I don't think so.
Try it.
Just did.
See if what happens if you use the arrow key. Nothing. No, maybe not.
Nope.
Okay.
What I've noticed is you have to go back.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just do what you were doing then. So all of these images are reflections, and the first 3 are all reflections in metal. And in this case, it's a kind of a hammered metal bowl. And I experimented with reflecting all kinds of different things in the bowl to try to get different combinations of color and so forth. This one is actually markers, colored markers reflected in the bowl. Next one. This, I believe, is also the markers, but just sort of taken from a different configuration of markers and a different angle. And I'm really attracted to the distortions that the metal causes in the reflections. And I've been playing around with reflections of all kinds, water, glass, and so forth. So I've been working, in this case, in a series of these metal reflections. Next one. And this, I believe, is actually some fruit, so tomatoes or fruit being reflected, something red. Okay, let's move on. So my family took a trip to Lisbon, and I was very enamored with the wonderful, incredible tile work that was in Lisbon, and particularly the mosaics that were on the ground. And one of the days that we were there, it had rained, and there were just amazing reflections, and it was just a thin film of water on top of one of these mosaic tile patterns. That's fine, you can leave it. So this is actually another part of the same very large mosaic that was around one of the tourist attractions. And one of the things that you might notice, and one of the reasons that these images look a little bit unusual, is that in real life, we pretty much always experience reflections, the objects being reflected upside down. So the main thing that I do in these reflections is I flip them upside down so that you see the figures right side up. Okay, that's fine, we can go. This one's a little bit of a brain twister. This is just somebody's legs, somebody just standing there on the mosaic tile. So you're seeing kind of a combination of reflected color and through the reflection to the mosaic underneath. And there's one more of these. So this is actually my husband and my daughter who were walking over the mosaics. That's it.
Thank you, Nicole. The next photographer is Peter Pershan. Peter, you'll need to unmute yourself. See if I can help you out. Peter, are you with us?
He looks like he's there.
Unfortunately,
Wayne, can you unmute him?
I can't find him in my list.
I think Wayne can do it.
Yep.
Sure. Give me a moment here, and I will look for him.
And yeah, I can't unmute him.
Peter, the mute should be in the bottom left.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. And we can hear you, Peter, so go right ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I should have fixed that before we started. Anyway, these pictures were taken, as you can see, what, 40 years ago or something like that, before digital photography, when I had a dark room and only worked in black and white. And recently I decided to go through some of these old negatives and find things that I found interesting. And so these are just some of those things. We'll go back to the first picture.
Not cooperating. Hang on a moment. Huh. There we go.
Okay, so this you can see what it is. It's just a statue of a Buddha. There was a lovely museum in San Francisco. I'm not so even sure if it's still there anymore. But there are a couple of images, a couple of objects there that really fascinated me. In particular, what fascinated me was the color combination over here. You know, the shades of black and white. And so that was one of the things I liked. We can go on to the next one. Okay, this was taken here in Lexington. This was, I think, a Patriots Day parade. And this guy was just absolutely great. He had that car, I'm not quite sure what the vintage is, 1920s. But those two little boys on the left were really fascinated by it. I don't think they've ever seen anything quite like that. And I thought that guy was quite interesting. We can go on to the next one. This was something I staged in my house at one point. It just turned out to be somewhat a little bit surprising to me. The pear in the bowl, and it appears to me that pear looks like it's floating. And I thought that was an unusual effect. And so that's one of the pictures I grabbed. Go to the next one. This was again from the statue in the museum in San Francisco, the same museum where the Buddha was. Actually, this was black and white. I colored this in Photoshop because that's the original color of the jade. And it's hard to see at this size image, but when you blow it up, you can really see the very subtlety in the amazing skill of the sculpture. I don't know what the value of that thing would have been, but it seems to me it would have been pretty priceless, given the skill. And this was just fun. This was in that park around the museum.
Are you going to change this to
Pardon me?
discussion?
I just ran into these two mimes,
I love this one.
and we just enjoyed ourselves. This one. There's another picture of them too. Yeah. So as I say, we had a little bit of fun with each other in that one, and I enjoyed that. And I think there's one more, but not San Francisco. This is actually in Boston, right? Faneuil Hall. And one of the things I like to do is I like to take people as I find them, people that just look like fun and interesting. And these guys were clearly having a good time, and I was also listening to them. I think there's one more of that, and I think then I'm done.
I believe that's the last one, Peter.
There weren't two of these? Okay, well, that's it then. Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it.
The next photographer in our list can't be with us, but I'll quickly.
Come in there anytime, not like.
You can't hear me? The next photographer in our exhibit can't be with us, but I thought I'd quickly go through his photographs. Charlie Taylor loves to take photographs of nature. And street scenes. And he loves to hang out in music clubs, in particular Wally's in Boston, take photographs of musicians at work. And that's Charlie's photographs. And now I'd like to show you my photographs. I'm Tom Whelan. The photographs I'd like to show you are all images of trees. And they show a lot of different views of trees. This first one is a wide angle photograph. I think I'll briefly show it to you in a larger size, if I can. It's a view of a river valley in the cloud rainforest in Costa Rica. And in these photographs, what I've tried to do is show a lot of contrasting views. Sometimes there are contrasts in the angle of view, and sometimes there are contrasts in color. And the part of the tree that I showed you, this is a view of sassafras leaves that I took in Lexington. And here's a view of a forest in Lexington of beech trees in winter. And I'm contrasting it with this view of a mangrove tree in Florida. And before you saw vertical trunks, an orderly presentation. And in this one, you see the wild variety and chaos of nature, especially nature in the tropics. A close-up view of this time of ginkgo leaves. Ginkgo is an ancient tree. The leaves are particularly shapely and beautiful. And in the fall, they can fall in great clumps beneath ginkgo trees. This ginkgo tree was at the Arnold Arboretum in Boston. Finally, I'd like to show you a view of some oak trees on a California hillside near Petaluma. And I wanted to contrast it with the vibrant colors that you saw in these ginkgo leaves, and the really austere look of the grasses and the trees that are looking down from above. And the last photographer is Al Zabin. Al, are you ready to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, so I'm right now. I'm sitting about 100 yards away from the site of this picture. Kind of, I still think in terms of negatives and prints and darkrooms, and I'm somewhat largely self-taught, and my textbook was Ansel Adams' collection. So if there's some similarity in style, though certainly not in skills, it comes from thinking in terms of developing printing, which basically means for me that a photograph is only begun when I take the picture. If I just go back to the heron. So kind of, I'm up in Maine now, and as you can kind of see, it's getting a bit cloudy and foggy. With daylight today, I took this picture down from the shore of the bay, and he was with a 500 millimeter camera and a tripod, and he even with that lens, it was very small on the, I was about to say negative, on the screen. So fortunately, the speed, the shutter speed, and the tripod, everything was steady enough, so I could enlarge the picture maybe 4 or 5 times, maintain, and but basically, I spent a fair amount of time at the computer improving, using Lightroom, I think, improving the picture, particularly in dealing with the foreground. It was particularly lucky because this bird was very cooperative and happened to come down right in a shaft of light, purely unplanned. Okay, so most of this photograph was done using photo editing, just as I might have done it in the darkroom. let's see, I don't have control of this, but if we go to the photograph, yes, hold this one on Lake Louise. Again, completely by chance. My wife and I were taking a trip, took a trip up to the British Rockies, and Lake Louise generally is, and it's all the photographs I've ever saw for, in spectacularly beautiful blue, surrounded by deep green forest and the great mountains. We started our trip it was from Banff that day, and it was just starting to rain. By the time we got there, it was pouring. We hiked around the lake anyway, and essentially that was one of several pictures I've taken, and a good deal of it was done again, enhancing the sharpness, enhancing the contrast. It really made the elements stand out and recreates what I felt. That is, when I took the picture, in short, that was the original, I would say negative, the original unworked picture is interesting, but nothing particularly dramatic. Just moving on to another picture. This was, again, completely serendipitous. I was taking a walk when visiting our son in Jakarta, and walking through his neighborhood where the U.S. legation had most of their people housed, came upon this small mosque, and just walking around on its outside porch, I saw that scene. Okay. The original picture, in that wonderful alcove, you could not see the design because of the contrast was too great. The light absolutely washed it out. So again, finishing the photograph at home, I was able to bring out that really, I think, interesting work that was originally washed out. So the next picture, and maybe it's really the last one, this picture has been reworked 3 or 4 times. That is, I've had finished prints maybe three times before I made this. In reality, the clouds were spectacular. And finally, what I ended up doing, after suggestions from one of the painters at Lexart, is tone down the drama of the sky, cropped most of the foreground away, and it really this picture, unlike the others, this picture, most people have looked at it, feel it's successful, and I'm one of those people. And by working it and finishing it in the dark room, the light room, I emphasize what really grabbed me from the first time I saw it, was the massive clouds, but which were not the clouds. They were the mountains, and that's really what the picture is about. So my feeling is that, at least for me, I never get it right out of the camera. And you know, so so that's really kind of about it. This is, again, just another example of work in the darkroom, taken in a town in China. Behind this gentleman were bushes look like giant rhododendrons. And on the initial slide, this was a slide, by the way. So the original kit really you couldn't do much with it. The leaves were a distraction, and and by being able to darken them easily using a photo editing program, the interest of the picture is this man with this wonderful expression of being totally absorbed by the music he's playing. Was just came out, and I read one person who looked at it who was Chinese said, "I think I could tell you what the song he was playing was." Just so I do heavy photo editing, and I'm not particularly ashamed of it. And basically, again, another serendipitous. I was walking down on the beach here in Maine, and just after a summer storm and out of the mist, I saw this what looked like a schooner, and took dozens of pictures. And in the final preparation of this, I had to overcome the camera work, what the camera did, which is to clarify everything and enhance the contrast. So I went back and made it the way it looked when I was there, again, using various tools in the dark. I think that's
One more.
This one. Yeah, this one is in two versions, color and black and white. The black and white one will be featured in a future issue of the magazine, of the journal Black and White. And again, walking through an old the old town in the city of Pinyao, I just saw these folks standing in a doorway, and then one of them said something. The lady with the white hair said something to the other one, and then who leaned forward, and the one behind her leaned and said something to her ear, and that's when I took the picture. Pure luck. Again, I worked in the dark room at the computer to darken the background, just so that the attention of the viewer is focused on the people. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Al. So now I'd like to open up the floor to people who are listening to ask questions of our photographers. Wayne, perhaps you can assist us by unmuting people who raise their hand. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand on your video like I'm doing here, and Wayne can unmute you. Are there any questions? Susan.
I have a question. I've noticed that in some of Al's pictures, for example, there are individuals that are recognizable. Do you need to get photo releases or things like that from people when you take photos like that?
Al, do you have an answer for that?
The reason I ask is because when I was working at the museum, we ended up having to do that. And so we had to be very careful with whose photos we took for what and get photo releases, and it got really complicated. So I was just kind of wondering if that's something that, and the rules about photo releases come and go, and just kind of wondering how that affects what your work.
Well,
You know what, sir?
legally, if I'm pretty confident that legally, if what you're photographing is something that's going on out in public, you don't need to get a waiver unless you're going to use it commercially. But if you use it simply as a work of art, or just showing what's done out in public, nobody legally has the expectation of privacy. Quite another thing to set up something in the studio.
That's
So
my understanding as well.
I did not ask. I generally don't ask for a waiver if there's somebody who obviously sees me doing it, and I always either by asking or by an appropriate gesture, if we don't speak the same language, I'll do the picture, and if the person indicates no, and sometimes that happens, then I don't take the picture. And that's simply a matter of courtesy. So that's why, and I think most street photographers would agree with that approach.
Thank you. That's very informative, very helpful.
I think fine art photography may be something of an exception, but for websites, I know, and especially if there are minors involved, it's best to get permission of the parent before the photograph is published. Any other questions? Bill.
Bill, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I doesn't always see my click. I just volunteer Lawyers for the Arts is a Boston institution that can answer any legal questions around arts. And they're the Boston Arts Council. You can find a link to them.
Thank you. That's really useful.
So I just wanted to add that. They're very useful.
Yeah.
Great to know.
I go there because occasionally I license photographs for web purposes and for print. And the contract form that I've been using is like a decade old, and that boilerplate's probably changed.
There are so many nuances and little things, like if somebody uses your photo in something, if you have questions, it's good to just ask.
Yes, thank you.
So.
Carrie.
I wanted to make a comment about something that Al said about it being very serendipitous. I find as a photographer, you can't just decide I'm going to take a picture of, a robin today. You have to more go out there and wait and be open to what comes along and have the eye for it, which you kind of develop by hanging out with other photographers and photo clubs and other artists. So I really agree with Al that most of my photos are you know, you have to recognize the opportunity and be ready to take the picture.
I think it's also true that photographers can make their own luck. You can anticipate and be in the right place at the right time, the right light. If you're interested in a bird or a beautiful butterfly, you can know something about when you're likely to see that kind of bird or when that particular butterfly can fly. And there are a lot of aspects to that.
And of course, it helps to
Oh, Steve?
have your camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tom, could I just hop in for a moment?
Sure.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Wayne Davis. I'm the interim executive director of LexArt, and I just wanted to say welcome and thank you all for coming. Thank you also to all the wonderful photographers who contributed to this exhibition. We're really, really proud of the work that has gone into this by the photographers. There's some lovely images here. Louise and I happen to already own 2 of them. We love them so much. And anyone else who is interested in these, they are available for sale on our website, which is another thing we're excited about. We didn't offer things for sale before online, but we've gotten inventive with this pandemic. And I do hope that as things open up, and whether it's 2 months or 12 months before we're able physically to get together, I do hope that everyone who's been on this call will find the opportunity to visit us at our home in Lexington. We're actually proceeding with the renovation of our gallery with construction starting in the next week or 2. So we'll have an exciting new space to exhibit art and have all sorts of exciting events starting this fall. So I hope we'll see you later, if not sooner. Thank you all.
Are there any more questions for the photographers?
I'd like to just thank Jill for sending out that URL on the chat. I've already bookmarked it.
I'm certain that I'm going to be going
I'd
there.
like to say Jill is my daughter.
Oh,
Jill, you're muted.
All right, I don't have anything to say. Yes, I'm Peter Pershan's daughter. I'm also an artist myself, so.
well, if you are in Nashville, you might want to stop by the Lexington Arts and Crafts Society. There may be a place for you, a guild to welcome you, and it'd be a place where you could exhibit your work.
That's okay. I have other places, but yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that information.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you for letting me observe and being right along with you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Well, if there aren't any more questions, then I'll thank you all, and I'll remind you, as Wayne just did, that all the work that you've seen is for sale on our website.